Hello, my name is Kayla Grant. I'm joined with the lovely Jennifer Ogunsola. I'm so excited that you're a part of this series and that you can join us for this. So I'm going to jump right into it. I want to know a little bit about you and how you kind of embarked on this amazing 17-year journey through the media industry. So can you tell me about your background and how you got your passion for media?
So growing up, I always said that I was going to become an attorney. I was going to be a lawyer. Growing up, I loved to write. I used to create magazines and have mastheads, and I would put different people in my family, their names on the masthead, and give them jobs and write different articles about people in my family. And I just loved to write. I always journaled. I always kept a journal. And then I went to college, and I was a poli-sci major. I went to Temple University, and I was a poli-sci major because I thought that in order to go to law school, you had to be a political science major. And so I was a poli-sci major, and probably a month into my first semester of undergrad, I'm like, one, this is easy. Two, this is boring. I don't want to do this. And what do I do? And so I said, well, won't I double major in broadcast journalism and keep my major? So major in poli-sci and broadcast journalism, and then I minored in Spanish. So I did that, still thinking I'm going to law school and I'm going to become an attorney because that's what I promised my mother, my grandmother, and everybody. And I said it my whole life. And so I was a broadcast journalism double major, and I fell in love. I had my first internship at a radio station in Philly, and I worked for, his name is Kobe Tyner. So his name was Kobe Kobe, and he was the program director. So he was the boss. And I interned for him, and that probably was one of the best things that I could have done to launch my career. He was absolutely amazing. He introduced me to someone who helped me get in to BET. So after I interned at the radio station, or during the summer, after my sophomore year, I interned in New York at BET, and that was my first taste of broadcast journalism, and I loved it. I thought I wanted to be on camera, and I'm so glad that I did BET because our first project was to do what was it? We had to do a show where we were the personalities. We were the people in front of the camera, and I did the show, and I hated my voice. I hated the way I looked. And so I was like, I don't want to do that. Still not paying attention to the fact that I love to write. And so interning there, I got to be around everyone who contributed to the shows. And I met some of the writers, and I loved writing, and that's how I got into writing. And I told one of the producers that I wanted to do that. She was like, okay, well, write me 2 shows. And I went home, and she said, well, I need them by tomorrow. And so I went home that night, stayed up all night. I wrote 2 shows, and those shows were actually used and aired, and those are my words. And that's when I really fell in love. And I noticed the same producer, Candida Boyette Clemens, she had went to this party for this magazine that used to be in print called Trace Magazine. And it was just an amazing magazine. And I was like, wow, I would want to write for them one day. Looked them up. I stalked all of the interns that were on the masthead. And that's when Facebook was brand new. And so I found them on Facebook because that's when Facebook was new, only college students were on there. And so I stalked them, found them, sent them messages, and they responded. I wound up interning there, and that was my first taste of print journalism. And I realized after that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to always see my words. I didn't have to be the one speaking the words, but I just loved writing. And so that was my introduction to this journalism career. And I just, took it from there. And yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely going to touch on that because your internship experience was so diverse, coming from Radio 1 to BET, and you were just in so many different positions. So what made you, after that, decide to go to grad school?
So that's a funny story. So I got a job in New York and the pay was so low. I'm the oldest of three and we're all 4 years apart. So when I was graduating from undergrad, my middle sister was going to college. And so my mom is like, cool, you can do New York as long as you're able to support yourself because this is it. It's Jessica's turn. And so I'm like, I can't survive in New York off of this salary. So I moved back to Baltimore, which, you know, I love my home, but I didn't want to do that because it was New York. And I moved back home. I got a job working in the mayor's office there. And probably like, I don't even think it was a year in. I was like, this is what people go to college for. They go to college, they graduate, and then they go to work and they're bored. I was bored when I got home, bored out of my mind. I'm like, what else am I going to do? And, you know, I'd been in school all my life, and so that's all I knew. And I was just bored. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to grad school. And it was literally just like that. I went to grad school, it was going fine. And my last semester, I needed to take an externship. So I needed to work like 3 days a week. And the person who I was working for, she wasn't for that. And so I'm like, I'm not going to, you know, not finish school to work at a job where I'm making, I don't even know what I was making. I don't know, probably 20 something thousand. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. So I quit. And so I quit. And who did I call? I called, remember Kobe Tyner, who I interned for, my first internship. I called him and I said, you got to make a phone call to someone here in Baltimore at Radio One, just so that I'm able to pay my rent. And I did that. And I did that until I graduated and moved to Atlanta.
So how was that like as a Black woman working in there after grad school? How was that like?
So I still work for the city of Atlanta because the airport is owned by the city. And so I've been there since 2009. For me, I will say the experience has been great. You know, God just works in some, we say it all the time, mysterious ways, but God just, he comes through all the time. Because I will say this, I came down, I didn't have a job for a second. I got a job in the mayor's office. I was able to work for the previous mayor, Mayor Kasim Reed. And I worked for him for a while, and then I moved around. I got promotions, and then I was the communications director, workforce development agency, and Parks and Rec. And, you know, I did that. But in the midst of all of that, I got sick. I have multiple sclerosis. And while I was still in the mayor's office, I was out for a while just because I was sick and they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I lost my vision. I lost my ability to walk. It was just really bad. And that was the best place for me. They really took care of me. I never missed a paycheck. I never missed anything. And I always felt like once I got better, that I had a place to come back to because they made me feel like that. So working for the city has been, you know, pretty amazing because I've been able to move around in different capacities. Like right now, I work for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and that's owned by the city. And I love it. And I've always had good directors, like two women, Sanji Jacobs Day and Elise Durham. They have been tremendous in my life. Like they've just been they're amazing people, but who they are to me are just, you know, some really strong Black women who have been there for me when I needed a strong Black woman there for me. And so my experience has been great, and I'm able to still freelance write. And so I work full time. And my friends joke, they're like, do you still work? And I'm like, yes, I work full time, and then I freelance write. And so
what would be the best advice that you can give to recent graduates who want to build like their portfolio by freelancing?
What was always said to me, and I thought there was a workaround, but read, and write. Like you will only get better. The more you write, the better you will become. The more you read, the better you will become as a writer. And so I actually need to take my own advice, and I need to get into a book that I've been reading for like the last 2 months. But I would say read, and write. And As far as pitching, I don't think that people truly understand that it doesn't have to be difficult to pitch your story ideas. If they're good ideas and you pitch them to the editor of that section, like be very specific. Don't just find someone who works there and just pitch to them if it's not their section. Like do the work, do the research, and send them a note, send them an email, and say, read one of their stories, or say something about them that you admire, or you recently read one of their pieces and you thought they would be the best person to pitch this story idea to, and just pitch, and you'll get no's, but eventually that no will turn into a yes, and then that'll be your first byline, and just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I only can say that because that's how it was for me.
So you are consistently devoting your time to like the next generation of journalists, whether that be through ColorCom, Pink Lemonade, Story to Tell, like all of your other ventures, consistently devote your time to bringing up the next generation of journalists. So if you can go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Not to be afraid to just do it. Like stop. I'm a very strategic and practical person. I have to make sure that it makes sense before I jump out there and do it. I'm not that my middle sister, Jessica, she's just jump out there and figure it out person. And while I don't want to be all the way, just jump out there and figure it out, I wish I had a little more of that when I was younger, to just do it, figure it out, because you're young. You can always, if you mess up, it's just a lesson, and you can always jump back and get right back in the swing of things. And so I would say it would be, don't be afraid to do what you really want to do. Stop trying to make it the perfect situation for it to make sense all the time. Like if it's something you love, go after it and just jump out there. I would tell myself to do a little more of that.